Hello and welcome to Revenue Unscripted, the show for B2B founders, CEOs, advisors, and leaders where we unpack what really drives stronger revenue and margins. It's not just product, it's not just process, but it's also people and behaviors. I am your host, Jennica Dixon, president at Slattery Sales Group, and together we'll dive into how real organizations build high-performing cultures, avoid costly mistakes, and turn complex selling into predictable growth. And today I am joined by John Van Ness. He's currently a VP of sales with Otto Environmental Systems, a plastics molding company serving the solid waste industry. John's career in the environmental sector has spanned over 30 years and has included both operations and sales roles with hazardous and non-hazardous waste disposal companies. From an individual contributor to a sales leader, John's focus is on leading a team to build a healthy pipeline and close new business. John, welcome to Revenue Unscripted. It is a privilege to have you here.
Well, thank you, Jennica. It's great to be here. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you. So am I. And I have to say, I love the fact that it is her cat very clearly.
Yeah, we've been married for over 30 years and have had a number of pets, and none of them have liked my wife the best, even though she did all the feeding. They always sort of gravitated to me or one of our sons. So this is the first pet that we've had that follows her like a loving pet should.
I love it. The arc of how you ended up to where you are today. I have so many questions that I'm excited to ask you. We had a great conversation earlier. But before I dive into all those juicy conversations, could you please just give our listeners a really quick overview of what are you working on today?
So what I'm working on today is it's very boring and mundane. Because we're a plastics manufacturer, we buy a lot of resin, and if you've been watching the news at all, you'll realize that the Strait of Hormuz has been it's been sketchy getting product through there lately. A lot of plastics are made uh, from oil, basically, and because of that, prices have skyrocketed in the past few months. So what I was working on today was getting customers requoted and working on some of our municipal contracts to get those updated with market reflective pricing.
Oh my goodness. You're not alone. We have a number of clients in the manufacturing sector, and I mean, the last 1 to 3 years have been kind of a roller coaster, depending on
It,
the sector that they're
it
in.
has, it has, it's very reminiscent of what happened during COVID.
Yeah.
Right now, it's a completely different disruption, but same type of idea.
Yes, and I'm so glad you mentioned that because some of my questions are related to the things that you have learned coming out of some of those ups and downs. Because there are certain challenges that I think the manufacturing sector tends to absorb first before others, but they are challenges that I think at some point every leader is going to face in their
Mhm.
career, and there is nothing new under the sun. And so, the more wisdom that we can glean from those who have survived and thrived, the better. So, um, I would love to actually dive right into that kind of pivot. You did go through an experience, perhaps it was around the COVID time, but where you lost a significant portion of revenue. The company, I should say, the
Mhm.
company lost a significant portion of its revenue. Um, Can you, and you obviously don't have to name any names or anything like that. I understand that many of our guests may have non-competes or non-disclosure agreements or Byzantine agreements that may prevent too many details. But if you could give us a flyover of what was it like to be surprised by a sudden loss of significant revenue and how that impacted your company, I would love to unpack that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. So I started with Otto in 2019, September of 2019, and in March of the next year, 2020, we ended up losing contracts that we had with two national solid waste providers, services providers. So
That had to be massive.
it was probably about 30 to 40% of our uh, annual revenue
Wow.
just sort of walked out the door. And we'd been working with these organizations for quite a few years. They made a very, very price sensitive decision. So we ended up having really pivot quickly and come up with a plan on how we were gonna survive this. Because I mean, that you're sort of budgeted for X amount, and when you take half of that away, you've got too much labor, too much raw materials, too much plant. So we really, really struggled on what that approach was gonna be. And at the end of the day, the salespeople, we just all went out and we replaced that revenue in about 6 months by, diversifying our customer base. And we instead of going after those 1 or 2 really, really big fish that provide low margins, we went after small and medium-sized customers that needed uh, a little more, uh, sort of a program that fit their needs, sort of like a customized program, and we were able to increase our margins significantly while still replacing all the business. And then even at that point, if we lost a customer, it was really no big deal because they weren't they were such a small percentage we were able to just get into that grind of continually prospecting.
That's fascinating. There are two pieces that I want to unpack a little bit more. And the first one is um, just getting out there and landing more business. What did you do to get that growth that you were seeking?
We were fortunate at the time. One sort of blessing in disguise was during COVID, nobody wanted to see people in person. I mean, there were travel restrictions. I mean, you could still travel closely, but it just wasn't as easy to get appointments with customers in person. But we were lucky that we're selling a product that everybody pretty much understands what it is, and there's some variations between our product and our competitors, but it's it's pretty standard. So we were able to use, virtual meetings, phone calls, text, smoke signals to really get the word out and get a lot of quotes out to customers and prospects and just follow up. And everybody's in their office, so all you had was time to follow up on opportunities and try to get new quotes out the door.
I love that. And it's funny, at the end of the day, sometimes just outbound activity does wonders.
Right. It's
Some
amazing. Yeah, we talked about this a few weeks ago. It's amazing how picking up the phone and calling somebody and having that connection is really what starts the sale.
It's so true, and I see this because we do sales consulting, and while I see a lot of chatter in the marketplace around all the new technological tools to do outbound or replace outbound, there's a lot of marketing, tools out there, there's a lot of advertising tools, there's a lot of AI now trying to replace the BDR. Um, while while other companies are trying to figure out how to make all of those work for them effectively in a way that will actually gain revenue, the company that is out there just picking up the phone and dialing
Mhm.
is winning right now. And, long term, I suspect that those technological advancements will find their place and provide a competitive edge. But right now, and I think quite frankly, as long as humans are needed in this part of selling, that will never go away.
Right. Well, and
Yeah.
from a salesperson's perspective, there's like, there's over my career, there's been a lot of movement towards CRMs. And while CRMs are great, they're really fabulous tools. They can give you all of the customer history. It's a place to store all that customer history, all those contacts. But at the end of the day, y- if you've just got salespeople that are manipulating that data, you're really not getting anywhere. You've got to get out there
Right.
and actually speak to somebody. And you're right. There's no amount of AI that's gonna replace somebody actually making a phone call.
It's so true. At some point, there needs to be first human contact
Mhm.
because the sale is human.
Right.
Marketing can be automated, advertising can be automated, but the sale is human. And so, therefore, at some point, there has to be first human contact.
Right.
And we often tell our clients when they're working on outbound, they're like, "Are you sure this is going to work?" Like, I don't think your competitors are actually calling on your prospects. they're emailing them, they're trying to reach them in other ways.
Mhm.
But a lot of sales teams aren't picking up the phone and actually dialing. And it's amazing how much traction that can get you in the marketplace. I love that. The second piece that I wanted to unpack about the challenge that you faced, which I mean, that had to have been terrifying to suddenly lose 30 to 40% of your revenue rather quickly, is margins. Because I know in some growth strategies, it is appealing to go after the whales because, in fact, it's not uncommon when you're looking at how are we going to grow this year, and various ideas are proposed for how we're going to grow. There is the old trick of look at your customer list and fire the bottom 20% and keep the top, and or in some cases more than 20%, depending on the year and who's running that math. So I'm curious about your choice to actually go downstream and not up, moving away from the whales. Can you talk through the margins and how that informed your choice?
Well, I think, uh, we were able to I think we didn't have a choice. I mean, there's a limited number of whales. Those contracts don't come out very often. I mean, there's probably 5 national solid waste providers, that buy our products. So, if outside of if those guys don't have bits coming out, you've gotta knock on the smaller companies, and the where one niche that we really filled were sort of like small startups, because they're in the solid waste industry, there's not a huge barrier to entry to start a company. You have to buy a truck and maybe have a couple of people to work on it. But it's uh, a lot of family owned companies, and these companies can really grow and scale quickly. So we latched on to a a number of these. We sort of we just bought a lot of lottery tickets. I bought a bunch of lottery tickets, and a lot of them paid off because these companies were growing from starting out. Their first order might be 100 trash carts, and then the next year it might be 5,000, and then
Wow.
after that, I mean, so we had some customers that were really growing quickly, and they were relying on us, and we were able to keep up with their demand, and that was spread out over the entire United States.
Sweet. And I'm curious when it comes to that kind of growth, did you ever find yourself in a position then when maybe one of your customers all of a sudden grew big enough, or maybe you landed a new contract that was big enough to qualify suddenly as a whale again? And now you have the growth problem. And what I'm really wondering about is because you've been on one side of the equation where you got rid of the whales and went after the smaller ones and diversified your revenue sources and protected your margins. I love that. What about when growing? Have you experienced where all of a sudden this is a big contract, this is massive, it could double our business? What do you do now? And what are the challenges that come with that?
Right, and that's sort of happened in the last year, where a lot of those customers that have grown and developed over the years have gotten to the point where they're starting to push on each other, like, they're pushing our capacity, and so we're dealing with that right now. Plus, we won another large, municipal contract that's sort of creating some, I guess, good headwinds for us, but that capacity is tied up with a few with now 1 or 2 really large accounts, and some of those smaller accounts we're unfortunately having to make some hard decisions about who we service.
Oh, that's hard. That
Yeah, it
is
is. It's
really
really
hard.
tough.
Wow.
Plus our increased material costs. It a lot of challenging conversations the last few months.
What kind of advice would you give to a leader who's navigating that for the first time?
I think the biggest challenge we've had is our sales teams, and I think that this is true with all salespeople. They really don't like giving out bad news, and they're afraid because they're there it's the end of the day, it's a service type of a of an industry. I mean, sales is you're trying to solve problems, and and help people to grow and help companies to grow. And when you have a situation where you're having to give bad news, I think the salespeople tend to shy away from that and and just either ignore, start, watching the phone number, screening their calls because, "Oh, I don't want to give that guy. I got to call that guy and give him some bad news. That's going to be a brutal conversation." And that sort of makes it worse. So you just almost have to eat your vegetables and answer the call and give the bad news and just be straight and honest. And a lot of times they're accepting.
Wow. I I have seen this play out in companies before, and it's interesting how that willingness to be honest goes far and
Mhm,
just have those hard conversations. Um, wow. How on earth do you encourage that in your culture? Because I think you're right, a lot of sales teams in particular are optimistic. They want to remain optimistic.
mhm.
And how do you encourage that internally, that willingness to have hard conversations?
Well, I think it comes from the top down, and the if the executive leadership gives you no other choice, then that's what you have to do. And then I try to model that behavior. I know I'm not the best at it because I don't like giving bad news out any more than anybody else does. But at some point, the buck stops with you, and you've got to lead the team and sort of carry the brunt of of those conversations.
Sweet. And when you're looking at growth and your pipeline is strong, let's say the sales team is bringing in the orders and growth is on the horizon. We have seen occasionally in the marketplace where the sales pipeline is strong, but fulfillment starts becoming an issue. So sales can be great, but the business can be struggling. I'm curious about your take on that. Have you seen that play out in the marketplace? And what can a leader do to ensure that the operations keep up with the
Mhm.
demand created by that sales pipeline?
Right. Yeah, that's a challenge. And unfortunately, sometimes pumps break or you'll have equipment downtime. Um, raw material shipments might be delayed. You could have a weather impact. You've got to stay right in front of operations, the production people, and make sure that they first and foremost know what the priority orders are and who the priority customers are, and then just sort of work back from there. And not every unfortunately, when you're in a situation like that, you're maybe gonna lose an order, but if you're honest with the customers and let them know that, "Hey, this is the situation we're in," um, I give them an opportunity to cancel or go somewhere else, and then maybe you can live to fight another day, so to speak.
Ooh, give them an opportunity to go somewhere else. There's that radical honesty again. Also, probably not easy to do.
Now it's really hard, and salespeople are all paid on whether it's a commission or a sales bonus based on revenue targets. That's basic you're telling somebody to take money out of their pocket, which is really, really hard.
Yeah. Oh, that would be very hard. One of the reasons why I started the show Revenue Unscripted is because I see a gap sometimes in the marketplace between the strategies for growth that a company might have and the tactical execution. And not necessarily on the sales side. The sales team might be very well equipped, they might be very highly skilled, they might have a wonderful addressable market that they can go after. But sometimes there is a disconnect between what the s- w- what the leaders of the company might be expecting as part of their growth strategy and what the marketplace is actually delivering for that. So my personal perspective, of course, is one that is informed by having grown up in the sales industry. I am in it like a fish swims in water, and I think sometimes when you're in it, you can't always articulate what it is that's unique about that world, which is why I love having guests on who have
Mhm.
incredible experience in the marketplace. I am curious from your perspective, if you could give advice to a founder or a CEO, but if you were to speak to a CEO or a room full of CEOs who are leading companies and maybe they haven't been the ones knocking on doors, What is one belief that they might hold about sales in their organization that you would encourage them to let go of or evolve?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think a lot of uh, founders, CEOs, they 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 think that because the revenue might be a little up and down or squishy, that it's because the salespeople aren't working. And there's times when you might hit a rough spell. But if from a salesperson's perspective, if you keep doing the the tasks that generate revenue, seeing customers, have a healthy pipeline, the at the end of the day, it's gonna even out. So you might have an up or down month, you might have a bad quarter, a couple of bad quarters, but if you that I know that the CEOs and founders especially like to be very, very hands-on. Founders especially like to be very, very hands-on, and they wanna see results immediately, and you're just not always gonna get those immediate results. We had when I was with another company years and years ago, where I spent the majority of my career, about every 2 years, we would go through a massive sales reorganization, like redesigning territories and, uh, and
Wow.
and then they'd say, "Oh, we're doing this because sales are stagnant." Even though they weren't, there was a nice steady growth, but they wanted to shake it up. So then you've got really like 6 months of trying to figure out where everybody is, who your new account list is, and then
Yes.
it takes a little bit of time to get going. So then 18 months, 2 years, you're back to where you were, you're back to growing, and then they do it again. So it was this amazing, wash, dry, rinse, repeat, cycle, and there were one time they went from having a geographic-based sales group to industry specific, like they had different verticals that people were assigned to, and then after 2 years, it was, "Ah, we're going back to geography." And it was the same consultant made both recommendations. So we had a big national consultant come in and say, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, you're gonna get so much better results if you go to a siloed approach." And then that lasted 2 years, and they said, "Ah, you need to go back to geography, man. That's the way to do it."
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
And
it
those
was I know, it was a the salespeople at the field were in the field level. They were just out there doing their thing every day and, just dealing with whatever all of the challenges that came with it.
that would have been very interesting. I can't imagine being one of those salespeople. And I think one of the things that some leaders can forget, because it's very easy to forget, if you move around an engineer or an accountant or an ops leader to another part of their team or their organization or into a different silo, things can change, but certain things don't change, like their paycheck.
Mhm,
Assuming that they're just making a lateral move, let's say, the paycheck doesn't move. When you mess with sales territories and incentives, you are messing with people's paychecks,
mhm,
which messes with their incentives to perform the behaviors that you are hoping that they will perform. And I have seen this play out so many times. We have worked with more than 2,000 companies over 170 different industries for the last 4 decades. And I have seen this play out again and again and again, where it looks like a really good idea on paper to reshuffle territories or do exactly what you just described, go from a geography based to an industry based type territory. And those moves are not free moves. There are so many, I think, more unintended consequences when you do that
mhm,
on a sales team than if you were to do that, say, in your engineering team or your ops
right,
team. I mean, those aren't free moves either, but I think that the residual effects are perhaps less, and they're different because if you, I have seen it play out where territories get shuffled around, and all of a sudden the star sales guy who isn't actually, he might have the lowest closing rate of anybody on the team, but he's been looking like the star sales guy because he was there the longest and he was there when it was greenfield work and a very different type of sale. He's the rock star. So he's given, after a reshuffle, he's given all the best territories. And then the other areas, the people who are left on the team have to go into territories where there is actually no human way that they can make quota.
mhm,
There isn't, if you look closely at their addressable market and who the targets actually are in those areas. And that's not without consequences.
Right.
Like, this is people's paychecks. This is their incentives. If you want them to go out and do the hard thing that only 3% of the workforce is even willing to do, which is selling, they got to be incentivized to do it. And
Mhm.
I love the fact that when you and I were talking earlier, you mentioned that sales is such a great place to land for a career. Can you unpack that a little bit? Like, what is it that, how did you land on the sales side of things? What did that look like? And what made you conclude that it was a great place to be?
So I was working for, the company was called Safety Clean at the time. And I was in an operations role. And I think I moved into a customer service manager position. And uh, I lived in a little town in Northern Illinois where we had a, a transfer facility. And the salesperson wasn't doing a great job. He was just, he, I don't know. He was a very good person, but he just, for whatever reason, he'd just been doing it for so long. He was looking at the same customers, same prospects, and just sort of lost his edge, I guess. So they switched me with him. So he became the customer service manager. I went into managing a sales territory, and it was like a light switch went off. I mean, I remember the first couple of weeks I was just sort of, doing what I thought was right, and then my boss called me up and said, "Listen, man, this isn't a hard job. You gotta see 12 customers a week, 12 prospects a week. If you do that, the numbers will work out where you'll make your quota." And so that I started just making sales calls, and it's the best job. Getting out, your boss is never with you or isn't with you very often. You're out doing your own thing. Um, you're meeting a lot of different interesting people. You're learning new things every day. I always really loved being that individual contributor because you can do you can your every day is going to be completely different.
I love that. And there was a lot of wisdom packed into that advice to just go see a certain number of prospects every week
Hmm.
because it is a numbers game. I It's interesting to me how truly the stats that we have, the most recent stats that we have say that only about 3% of the workforce is even willing to do sales, and those are just the ones that are willing. So
Right.
there are a lot of people who are just good enough at selling to get on the payroll to sell their way into that position. But I was just talking to a leader recently, and they were expressing their frustration in filling a sales position, and they were going back and forth with their top candidate, second interview, third interview, and by the time they were getting really close to making an offer, the compensation plan came up, and they were talking about it, and this candidate pushed back a lot on the comp plan because it was too heavily commissioned and they wanted a higher base. Now the base was extremely generous already. This is a very elite, top tier company. It was a very comfortable base, and they just didn't want their comp plan to be tied to the commission quite so much. And
Hmm.
this leader had fallen in love with the candidate. They'd been very good at selling their way through the interviews, but then it suddenly clicked with them at the end of that long third interview. Wait a second. If this person doesn't believe in their ability to close enough business for that commission piece to be worth it to them, why should I? And it's interesting how many people there's a lot of people out there who are just good enough at selling to get on
Yeah.
the payroll, but they're not necessarily willing to go out into the marketplace and do the hard thing that you're
Hmm.
describing, which is knocking on those doors and opening up those conversations. And I love talking to somebody who looks at that with such a positive view. Now, from the other perspective, for somebody, let's say a leader who has never done that door knocking, what is something that you would like them to understand about sales that they may not know if they haven't actually been the ones out in the field doing it?
I think that a salesperson's superpower is their ability to deal with rejection on a really pretty frequent basis and then keep coming back for more. So I've had some
Yes.
customers that have that have said, "Why you rejected me? I've rejected you. Why do you keep calling? Because there might be an opportunity." And so
Right.
like that type of the rejection is really hard. Like nobody gets rejected, but good salespeople have a way of sort of compartmentalizing that and realizing it's not personal. It's just I wasn't able to uh, meet their needs or expectations this one time, but I'm gonna give them 3 months, 6 months, come back and continue to bang your head against the wall.
I love that. There's an elite seller that we know very well, my dad and we've worked with him before, and he's also a very successful sales consultant. He has whenever he's working with a client, just like we work with our clients, and one of the things we all do is we help our clients put the best sales talent into whatever role they have open. So if they're looking for, field sales, outside, inside, whatever it might be, we help them find the right talent for that particular role, because sales is, of course, as you've probably lived, sales is the one odd area where past performance does not guarantee future success. And, you can crush it in one organization and then get hired into a slightly different sales role, and it just is misaligned and everybody ends up frustrated. So he has a wonderful way of telling his clients a version of exactly what you just said, which was when he's talking to them and he's trying to help them understand that hiring salespeople is different. He says every other position in your company, your bookkeeper, your engineer, your ops leader, when they go about their day, how many of them end up having the door slammed in their face almost every time they try to do something? And the answer, of course, is, well, none of them. Like, even if everybody hates each other, generally they're all rowing in the same
Right.
direction in the boat. But sales is unique. It is the one position in a company where if they're doing their job right, they're going to have the door slammed in their face 9 times out of 10.
Hmm.
And that's a normal day. That's a good day.
Yeah.
And they should be seeking that out. That takes a totally different type of person.
Right.
And
I
go
had
for it.
a prospect once. This was when I was just starting out, and I was trying to get in, and I kept calling and calling, and he was just he was just completely ghosting me. So one day I get a call from somebody in the IT department of this guy's company, and he goes, "Hey, listen, this guy doesn't want to. He says you're harassing him. I can block your number, but it's a pain in the neck. Can you just stop calling him?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I guess I didn't realize I was just trying to sell him something." So
Yeah.
yeah, you can definitely go too far on the rejection, but yeah, at the end of the day, you've got to be able to take that and keep moving forward. So
And that's not easy. I remember working with one young man who was doing his first sales job in the marketplace. He was very heavily qualified in other areas, but this was his first foray into sales. And he's a recovering alcoholic, so he doesn't drink alcohol anymore. And he, he calls me up at the end of the day. He's like, I have never wanted to drink so much in my life
you've
after
got some
his
gallows
first,
humor.
yeah, after the first day of cold calling. It's like, hang in there, man. Hang in there. Oh, so I'm
That's definitely something that they don't advertise in the 12-step program, right?
no, yeah, don't go into sales. Go be a lawyer instead. Oh, as you have experience leading teams, you have experience being in the field. And so I'm curious, if you were talking to a founder, let's say you're talking to a founder who is very excited about the solution that they are bringing to the marketplace. They want to raise funds soon, but first they've got to, get this idea off the ground a little bit, but they've never sold before. They're brilliant. They've got a great idea. They've never sold before, but they are suddenly in the position of being their company's primary salesperson.
Mhm.
What advice would you give to them as they are trying to grow their business, probably very fast, but in this window of time, they are the sales team?
Right. I I think you have to know your market and know your product really well, and then instead of pushing the product, try to understand what the customer's needs are. So instead of trying to solve the problem, try to uncover what the problem is first.
Ooh,
Because
I like that.
we have a lot of I, on a at least once or twice a month, I have somebody reach out to me with a, "Hey, I've got this mousetrap. I've got this mousetrap that's the best thing ever." And they think that everybody's just gonna jump all over it, but you've gotta understand what the what the problems are. and if it's not creating a problem, if it's not solving a problem for the company, they're not interested in it at all. And now it might solve a problem for somebody completely, for a completely different group of customers or prospects, but you've got to understand, don't lead with the product, lead with the, like, use a problem solving a mentality to figure out what the issues are and how this product fits that.
There is a lot of depth that you just dropped, John, in that. And we have seen this play out many, many times in the marketplace. And if I may augment and add to what you said, this when we're working with sales teams, that's much of what we do because sales teams are often excited to go out in the marketplace and tell the marketplace all the great stuff that they have. But of course, there are two things that will not move the needle in a sale. One is telling them stuff because they know you're not a neutral party. And then the other one is good stuff. People don't go through the pain of change for something good. They're only going to do it when the problem they have hurts enough to be worth going through the pain of
Hmm.
change. And that's why there's so many pain-based selling systems out there. And I
Right.
think your advice is spot on. And what we have seen, especially with founders who are brilliant, they might be engineers, they might be computer scientists, they're so excited for their solution that they lose sight of the fact that no matter how good the solution is, no matter how beautiful and elegant the engineering is, at the end of the day, you're selling to a human who does not want to go through the pain of change. And the
Right.
only thing that's going to get them to do that is some kind of pain in the status quo. So if I may augment what you said, it's, is there a problem? I would augment that to even say, is there a problem that's worth fixing?
Right.
Because a lot of people are willing to hold on to problems.
Yeah. Well, really good salespeople, they can develop that performance gap, right? Where the difference
Yes.
between what somebody's getting and what they want or what would make it better. So if you can uncover that, that's a gold mine right there. You can
Yes.
really sell a lot. If you've got if you can understand what the customer prospect is going through just to survive or do their regular operations, and then if you could fix something that they're augmenting to, come up with a product or solution, that's that's where you make your bones.
Oh, and what you just described, just so my listeners understand, takes a tremendous amount of skill and self-control and asking great questions. And you tapped into something that it's magic. I mean, when you watch it happen in the marketplace, it's like watching magic where a great salesperson is able to not only find that gap between where that prospect is today and where they want to be, but to deepen it with
Mhm.
the great questions that they ask. And that is profound. I love that. Thank you. Ah, I am aware that I have to land this plane soon. So I gotta curtail my questions and respect your time. So let me ask you this, and I will try to contain my enthusiasm and stop asking you questions after this. So bring us home with this one. When we were talking earlier, you mentioned that if you were to, you joked about the fact that if you were to like write a sales book, it would probably be about 2 pages. So my question for you is, what is one thing that companies or leaders tend to overcomplicate about revenue?
That's a great question. I think that what they the from a company's perspective, I think you stumped me a little bit, Jenica. The
Sorry.
from a company's perspective, the um, they want to have that dialed in forecast, and the revenue is going to come if you've got a good sales team that's out doing the things that they're supposed to do, and it's a good product. The revenue is going to come. It might be a little. It might vary from month to month. You could miss a forecast, and a lot of times they, the executive leadership goes bananas if you miss a forecast,
Yeah,
but they have to, you sort of have to build that in, I think, a little bit to the process, because you, at the end of the month, like if it's halfway through the month and you're way below your forecast, you're not going to make it up in 2 weeks. Like there's not
true.
some magic pill that's going to happen. So think in longer periods of time than just a 30-day or a 1 month increment. You've got to look at it from a quarterly basis or even an annual basis, because you could have one or two bad months, but everything else is great. At the end of the year, you're fabulous. But I think a lot of times the executive leadership will get frantic over 1 month being bad because they've got to report to their shareholders. Nobody likes reporting bad results, but take that with a grain of salt and look at what the sales team, the customer service team, the production people are doing to get the revenue moving in the right direction to increase it. So instead of focusing on the negative, let's focus on the actions that are creating results.
I love that. And at the risk of taking us down too deep of a rabbit hole, I cannot let this one go though. Uh, what would you tell a leader to look at or track or keep an eye on to give them peace of mind that perhaps the fluctuations that they're seeing, or maybe the pause in growth that they're seeing, or maybe 1 month where the results are coming in, what would you tell them to look at to give them the assurance that, or the peace of mind that the fluctuations they're seeing are normal and not indicative of some underlying
Mhm.
fundamental problem?
I think you have to look at the orders you've got on the books. You have to look at the pipeline. You have to look at the activity at the salespeople's activity. Those those three components really can give you some assurance that okay, we dipped this month, but we're going to come back up. That's really I think that's the key is at the end of the day, revenue's the the KPI that I care about most, especially revenue to budget. But then after that, it's how full is your pipeline, and then what activities are you doing to make sure that your pipeline's full and that you're closing business.
And I need to double click on that for my listeners because my entire world, I do revenue consulting. This is where we work. We come in and help a company diagnose, are these deeper underlying issues? What's going on? Um, what you said was profound, the behaviors. And I cannot tell you how often we come into a company to help them with revenues. And it's really not uncommon to see that the behaviors are not being tracked. There isn't accountability to
Mhm.
those behaviors. And John, I 100% agree with you that the sales team's behaviors are an incredibly strong leading indicator of where we're going to be by the end of the month or the end of the quarter or the end of the year. And I think that can probably give them a lot of peace of mind. I mean, it's like the story you shared where the guy said, "You got to talk to 12. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, if you do that, we'll hit our numbers." And I think that can bring a lot of peace of mind. Oh, is there I'm exercising much self-control to not unpack a few other things that I really want to. But we'll have to continue this conversation again some other time. Is there one final piece of advice that you might give to somebody leading an organization who they've got humans on their payroll going out and doing sales activities in the marketplace? Is there one final piece of advice that you might have for them? And if I have already pulled it out of you, then that's totally fine. But is there one piece that I have missed?
Yeah, I think that at the end of the day, whenever you're leading a team, you have to realize you're leading individuals and you're leading people. So you have to, if you treat people with respect and kindness and grace, I think that that's the best way to get the most out of your team. And you can yell and scream and get results, but at the end of the day, if you treat people like their colleagues and they're important team members, and you get everybody pulling in the same direction, and the organization will succeed.
I love that. I noticed you didn't say anything about reorganizing the territories every 18
Yeah, that's always a
months.
fun thing. That kind of busy work is always a great idea too. But that would be number two behind the treat people nicely.
Oh dear. Oh man, I'm gonna have to splice that. Oh no. I love it. John, thank you so much for sharing your time and your insights so generously here. Where can our audience find you if they want to follow up with you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me there. I don't do a whole lot of social media stuff, but
That's probably wise. It's okay.
yeah, it's good for your mental health. But yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect. And Jenica, this was such a fun time. I was so nervous. You're a great host, and
Thank
I'm
you.
definitely going to get my mother to watch this like a million times. So we'll get you boosted up the Apple podcast list.
Excellent. I that might double my my numbers. I love it. Thank you. John, thank you so much. And to all of our listeners, thank you. You have so much you could be doing with your time. I know there's a lot of stuff to listen to out there. Thank you so much for spending your time here. We deeply appreciate it. And please share this with a friend, a colleague, another leader who is also perhaps stuck with human sellers on their payroll and isn't entirely sure what to do with them now that AI is here. They should have replaced him by now, but here we are.
Yep.
So thank you all. Have a wonderful day, and we will be back later.